All right, good morning, everybody. This is Nate Curran. I'm the Director of Marketing with Tag Bacon, and we're going to learn about certified payroll basics today and kind of more of a hands-on, hopefully, than training than maybe what you've had in the past. We're going to wait just a minute or so to make sure that we get all of the attendees in and get them into the system here. So we'll start here in about a minute or so. All right. So again, my name is Nate Curran. I'm the Director of Marketing with Tag Bacon. We are a certified payroll software. We work with contractors, specialty contractors, and general contractors to simplify their compliance around prevailing wage jobs. And we're working with ABC SoCal today to try to give you guys more of a hands-on training around how to do certified payroll and prevailing wage reporting. And so really what we've envisioned for the next 90 minutes or so is really kind of a hands-on practical training that and ideally as interactive as possible. So I am going to I'm going to unmute everybody kind of as we get past some of the preliminary stuff. So as you have questions, you can either put those questions into the chat and we'll answer them that way. That's probably the easiest. And then I'll unmute everybody towards the end, but we'll take your questions as as we're going through a topic. And if we need to stop and slow down and spend some time in an area, we'll go ahead and do that. I think we have plenty of time to do this. But I want to start with our agenda today. So we're going to talk about the history of Davis-Bacon and the related acts and kind of where they kind of came from, and hopefully that will kind of give some background as far as why we have to do the things that we have to do. And then we're going to go through some specific rules and regulations around prevailing wage laws. If some of you I know are into multi-states, and so you have to follow kind of what some of those different regulations are, and we'll go through some of those. But we'll also go through federal versus state reporting. In particular, we're going to dive really deep into the federal reporting, the federal report, which is the WH 347, and as well as the California DIR A131 report. So we'll dive very deep into both of those and really talk about how to put those reports together, what's the information that you need to do, what are some tips and tricks to kind of help you be a little bit more organized and take some of the sting out of doing these reports. And then we'll talk about kind of your responsibilities as far as certified reports and end with some Q&A. So hopefully, again, over the next 85 to 90 minutes, you get some very practical tips. Ideally, what I would love to see happen is, kind of throughout, we'll open up the we'll unmute people to kind of share best practices and different things so that we can kind of learn from each other as well. So with that, we'll get started. So we'll get through some of the boring stuff here as far as the Davis-Bacon and kind of the whole history of it. And so, Davis-Bacon Act was originally passed in the 30s during the Depression, and it was really designed to. It was really designed to protect local workers. I mean, that was the original part of it. And so what was happening during that time were workers were kind of flooding to major cities in the Northeast and really wanted to, and the companies there wanted to protect themselves from lower wage workers coming into their areas and those companies. And so that's really where prevailing wages came. It allows local jurisdictions as well as the federal government to set minimum wages on a per project basis, or to basically ensure that there is a fair wage that's being paid. Part of that is also fringe benefits, and we'll get into kind of what is a fringe benefit here in a little bit, but that's all part of a prevailing wage. It's not only the base rate, but also the fringe benefit. And we'll get into those definitions here in a little bit. But basically, the regulatory bodies over the top of this, from a federal standpoint, it's the Department of Labor. From the state, it's typically each state's Department of Labor, but there are also, as many of you are well aware of, there are also county and city regulations that govern these prevailing wage jobs. And it's really based on who owns the project. And again, we'll kind of get into that in a little bit as well. So who has to follow these prevailing wage laws? So it really applies to contractors and subcontractors that perform the work at the federal level. It's any contract in excess of $2,000. At the state level, that varies kind of from state by state as far as who's subject to this. As most of you are aware, in California, that bar is extremely low. I think I believe it's $50,000 for contractors, which, as most of you are well aware of, that's maybe a couple days of work, and then all of a sudden it's $50,000. So it's almost all state. And again, there are city and county regulations that you also need to be aware of. I guess we kind of already talked about kind of the basic responsibilities, and we'll get more in depth into kind of what does that really mean as far as paying the laborers and mechanics no less than the local prevailing wages, and we'll get into what does that really mean. So some of those specific rules and regulations. So across the country, there actually are only 24 states that do not have prevailing wage laws. We're based out of Arizona, and so our, most of the prevailing wage that is done within our state is actually at the federal level. And so we don't necessarily have the complexities that you have in California. As far as the certified reporting, but again, for multiple states, for contractors that are in multiple states, you have to understand what those regulations are at the local level and not necessarily just at the federal level, unless that's the only types of projects that you're doing. Where complexity really gets in is when there's both federal, state, and sometimes even city monies involved in the same project. In those situations, what we recommend is, you pay the highest prevailing wage between any of those three entities. And so if there's a 50 cent difference between, the city, the state, and the federal government, then you'd pay whatever that highest of that 50 or those 50 cents are. And so that is from both the base rate wage as well as the fringe benefit amount. There's a ton of pressure from the federal government within the new administration to increase the number of prevailing wage jobs, which is, again, kind of one of those double-edged swords where you can, there's going to be, expansion of projects, construction projects across the country over the next several years. That's definitely the trend that we're seeing. There's a lot of bipartisan support around expansion into infrastructure bills and creating good construction jobs and projects. So there's going to be some opportunities to bid on those contracts and to expand kind of where your growth is coming from. The downside of that is that there's this complex reporting that goes with it, and a lot of oversight that you have to be prepared for. And hopefully that's really what we're getting to today. Specifically in California, California tends to, in these types of situations, when it comes to kind of prevailing wage laws, regulations, who has to be or what kind of projects are subject to prevailing wage. California tends to lead the way on that, as most of you again know. It's a very heavily regulated environment in California, and but what we tend to see is that something that passes in California, it tends to work on the coast first. There are definitely some states in the Northeast that will follow suit shortly thereafter, and then it kind of spreads across the country from there both ways. And so California seemingly tends to lead the way by 3 to 4 years, and then it gets a little bit more. These regulations or versions of those regulations seem to spread across the country across that. Within California, we're going to talk about work classifications and wage determinations next, and how to read those. But the state of California, typically they only issue these determinations twice a year, about 6 months apart. First one is in February, and those typically take place in the first part of June. And then the August one typically will take place in January. So you have a little bit of time after the determination is published to make those adjustments to any contracts that you're bidding on. That is kind of nice, to be honest with you, that California does that. At the federal level, those can change really at any point in time. And we'll go through that, but we've seen certain classifications that have had wage determined updates, 4 and 6 times during the year. And so from the federal standpoint, you definitely have to be on top of what those wage determinations are for the work classification. The federal government also tends to tweak the work classification quite a bit as well into different groups. And so on those federal projects, and we're going to dive into those pretty quickly here, you really need to understand where to go when you're bidding on a contract, when you're actually into and setting up the payrolls and the pay rates for your employees, making sure that you have the right determination there. And we'll go through that as well. So we're going to start with work classification versus wage determination. And again, hopefully we can get through some of the a little bit of the boring part. This is kind of the background and a lot of the kind of dictionary terms that we need to kind of go through, so that way we're all kind of talking the same way. And then I'm going to open this up for kind of just some questions and different things as we go through how to read the wage determination. So we're going to start with work classifications though first. So work classifications are basically the various types of construction that is done. And so it's typically broken down by, we have it here, residential, heavy, highway, building is another one. And it's can be varied by the geographic area. So it could be a county, it could be by city, or it could be across the country. And so you have to be kind of aware of, who is actually pushing the determinations for this. But a particular classification could be a laborer 1, electrician 2, bricklayer. Each one has its own determination. We're going to show you where to go to find those, both federally as well as in the state of California. And so you have to be kind of aware of, again, where do you need to go to find out what does what does a laborer 1 really mean? Or electrician 2, what does that group 2, what does that really mean? And each work classification and wage determination does define those, and we'll talk through those here in a little bit as well. Wage determination. So work classification is the work that is done by the employee. The wage determination is how much that you have to pay them to do that work. And that's really the difference between those two definitions. So wage determination, it's made up by the minimum base rate plus a fringe benefit rate. So fringe benefits, there's a lot of kind of discussion out there as far as what should or shouldn't be counted towards fringe benefit. We're going to give you some examples right now. So typical fringe benefits are HSA, FSA funding, health insurance, could be pension, PTO time is all considered fringe benefits. And so these are employer amounts that are placed into a fund for the benefit of the employee. There's definitely a lot of technical terms around this. We're actually, this, I forgot to mention up front, this webinar is actually a 4-part series. So this first one is really around the certified payroll. We're actually going to get into fringe benefits and some different ways and how you can manage that in a later webinar that allows you to kind of take advantage of some tax benefits if you do use different things other than cash to pay out the fringe benefit. But the big thing to remember for this right now is that this is an additional amount that needs to be paid to the employee that the employer or pays to the employee by the employer for the benefit of that employee. So whether that is a health insurance, whether that is a pension or 401k, or whether that's cash, it's an additional amount that needs to be paid for that, for that employee. And we're going to talk a little bit about, some different concepts around things like overtime and those types of things as well, and how fringe benefits really can be impacted or not impacted by those overtime hours. So again, that's kind of our quick and breezy definitions part of the presentation. And really what I'd like to do next is, as we go through, we're going to really talk about how to fill out the certified payroll report. And so I'm going to unmute you, everybody, so that way, if you do have questions, feel free to do that. But I'm going to ask a question or ask a request here. So I can unmute you. But I would like for you to put yourself on mute as well, so that we don't have some sidebar conversations in the background and things like that. It's just the way that the program works. I can either unmute you or mute everybody. So I'm gonna unmute everybody right now, so you have access to mute and unmute yourself. And with that, we are going to go to our next slide. So we can get there. Okay, so how to fill out a certified payroll report. So really the first thing, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme for us, is really gather your information and prepare yourself before you really dive in. And so, every form that we talk about will have some different nuances. There may be some different requirements, but there are some standard basic things. And this is, the complete name and personal identifier of the workers. That can also include their physical residential address as well. You need to know what your worker classifications are on that particular job. If you're lucky enough as a specialty contractor and you have designated roles for each one of your employees, and they never go outside of those roles, certified payroll reporting is going to be pretty simple for you. But if you have employees that go and do multiple classifications during a day, you have to take really, really careful, you need to be tracking those different classifications throughout the day for very, very seriously. That's one of the key ingredients if you do have an inspector that comes on the job site. One of the things that they will absolutely look at, one of their kind of keys to the audit is, okay, I observed a worker doing a certain type of job. Is that what they wrote down as far as their classification for that day? And so that is kind of that's one of those key audit inspections that that inspector will have. And so that's where you want to have a process in place that really allows either your workers to track time when they're moving from work task to work task, or your foreman has a process where they're making those changes on behalf of the employee, or some type of system where you're matching up either you're doing daily reports and that gets matched up with your time card. We recommend that you do that, on a daily basis. I know that can be extremely time consuming, but if you need to make adjustments, it's sometimes easier making those adjustments on a daily basis rather than on a weekly basis. Certified payroll reports, for the most part, on both federal as well as in California, they're due on a weekly basis. And so, if you have a typical week where you start on your week starts on Sunday, ends on Saturday, most of your work is done Monday through Friday, And then, so your work ending week is on that, let's just call it if it starts on the 1st, it ends on the 7th. And then you pay out that following Tuesday. So that would be, you see here, 8, 9, so that would be on the 10th. Your certified payroll is typically due by that 14th, by that following Friday. Is typically, and then it goes on every single week after that. There really isn't any set in stone regulation that says, hey, it has to be done by a certain day on that. The regulations say that it needs to be reported on a weekly basis. And so once you kind of get into that habit of, here's the day that I am submitting this particular certified report, it's typically then done on the same day of week for the weeks going forward. Other things to obviously really track closely is the number of hours that the employee or that the worker works within each one of those work classifications, both on a daily and weekly basis. So, one of the things that we recommend is, really implementing a strong time and attendance system. I know that there are a lot of contractors that still rely on pencil and paper to do their time cards. And if you are getting into, which is typically fine if you're not under a prevailing wage job, where that gets very difficult though is when you are taking on these prevailing wage jobs that do require certified payroll reporting. Getting those hours and those classifications correct is absolutely critical to staying in the good graces of whatever regulatory body that is overseeing. Having that strong time and attendance is really critical to this process. And then building out a process that allows you to verify and validate that that worker is, actually did what we said that they did for that amount of time. And that's really kind of the key piece of that. Any questions there as far as, the type of information that you need to have kind of up front before you actually go into to building this? Cool. All right. So we're going to start with the WH347. So this is really for any federal products or federal projects, federal only, that you take on. Again, high level things, workers have to be reported on weekly. We say here paid weekly, but it's actually just the reporting actually has to be done. You can choose your own pay periods. The regulation doesn't actually say that, doesn't necessarily say that you have to pay workers one way or the other, or what that frequency needs to be, but you have to report on that weekly. And so, doing the weekly payrolls obviously makes that a little bit easier, but you can choose whatever pay frequency that you want on that. And then we'll also talk about statement of non-performance, and so that's pretty standard across all prevailing wage regulations, whether that's federal, state, county, or city, is that, if you are started on that particular job, you still have to report weekly in a certified payroll whether or not there was work done on that job or not. And so we'll talk through kind of what the statement of non-performance. Obviously, if you're not doing any work on that job, it becomes a little bit less complicated. It actually is quite a bit less complicated than when you're actually doing the work on that job. But we'll go through that. So finding the federal determination, and so we're going to switch gears off of the presentation. We're going to actually go out to the website, and so the website here is www.beta.sam.gov, and so we're going to go to that website right now. And so from here, to find the wage determinations, so this is the home page here. To find the wage determinations, we're going to click on wage determinations. And then that is going to come down. Now, if you know what the wage determination number is, and a lot of times this will be on your actual, bid. And sorry, I have some communications that are popping up here. So then you can type in that number and it'll take you directly to that wage determination. Otherwise, you can click over here into construction. So these would be the construction ones. And then you can either look up by state, by construction type, by county. So for this, we're going to say this is an actual, a federal project. We're going to go into the building. This should show up on all of our, which it's not, which is great. All right, so we're going to select the state here as well. So we'll select California. And as like any good government work website, sometimes it works well for you the first time and sometimes it doesn't. This is awesome. All right, here we go. They're down here. So you can see the different wage determinations based on the county that you're working in at the federal level. So this one is building heavy modification numbers. Let's just go into this one well, let's actually take one that's near where we want to be. Here we go. Los Angeles County. So we're going to click on this. And this shows the wage determination number, modifications, where it is. And then as you go down, it will talk through a lot of the types of construction projects, what their modification numbers are. As you can see, this particular one was originally set in January. It already has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 modifications over the last 5 months. And so it outlines who these work classifications are. And so this is the work classification number here as set by this date. So this is what that is. And this is, and then it goes into what do they actually do here. So asbestos workers versus a fire stop technician. And this is the base rate that you would pay versus the amount of fringes that this would pay. And so what you need to do is determine the amount of work or the type of work that your employees are going to do on that particular job, and then find the following classification. And you can see as you scroll down, you can see all of the different definitions and the different of each classification, as well as the wage determination. So we're going to provide you this presentation at the end, where you're going to have all of these slides. At the end of this, we're going to show you these links right up here, so that you can have quick access to where to go to find these things. So coming back to our presentation, so as you can see here, we talked about the classifications. You'd have the number up there that you'd want to keep record of for each work classification. So that way, if you ever do go for an audit, you can say, look, this was the actual work classification, the classification number, as well as the wage determination number that I used as of this date. That is kind of a critical piece that you're going to want to have keep track of on every single job that you have. So filling out the WH-347. So we're going to go kind of line by line through some of these, as we go through this. If you want to, let me see here. So we're also going to send you a link to see this particular report that will be on there. So you find that on the Department of Labor's website as well. And then you can use this presentation to kind of help you step by step through each one of these and what you need to put on there. So on the first one, obviously you have the name and address of your business, and so I'm going to be flipping kind of back and forth here a little bit. So that's right in this area here. So whether you are the primary or general contractor or a subcontractor and then the name that you'd have on that, your address, payroll number. This should always start at payroll week number 1 for you for when you actually, or as a general contractor, they will set up the payroll number. As far as what that payroll number is. And you should be in contact with your general contractor to see what payroll, like if you're not doing any work for the first 3 months, and so you have 13 weeks of payrolls where you haven't even started on the project yet. There's 2 ways that we've seen it done, is that each subcontractor kind of starts as their own payroll number 1, which is fine. We really haven't seen a whole lot of issues with that, but the preferred method and the easiest method is having everyone on the same payroll week. And so, if you don't start until week 14, technically, yes, that is your first payroll number, but here you would put in 14 under your payroll so that it matches up with what the other. Actually, I'm take that back. That's not correct. The payroll number for you as a subcontractor needs to be the first time that you walk on that job. So I apologize there. So because if you put week 14 on there, that was what we were trying to get to. So if you put week 14 on there, then you would have had to do 13 weeks of non-performance, which is not really what, if you've never had an employee step on that job, that's not really what you're supposed to do. Your payroll number is as of the week that you start on that job, where your employee's first step onto that job site. That's payroll number 1. Your week ending is your week ending is the end of what your payroll is. So if you do payrolls Sunday through Saturday, or if your payroll week is Sunday through Saturday, then your week ending would be on that Saturday. If your payroll ending week is Wednesday to Thursday, or Thursday to Wednesday, then it would be on whatever day of the week that that Wednesday is on. Project location, project location. So this is the project that you're working on. Typically, each one of these projects will have an official name that's on the actual bid contract. That's the name that you'd want to be using here, as well as the location. Location can be an address or a city and state with zip, but it's typically the project name with the address of that particular project. And then the project or contract number, this is what you have with your general contractor. If you're the general contractor, this is what you use, or what your contract number is with the actual owner of the project. And so you typically will get this from your project. Going through the next level. So this next level is really, where a lot of the work comes out. So this is on the WH-347. So this is the name of your employee, as well as the last 4 digits of their social security number, the number of withholding exemptions that they have. So this kind of identifies for the federal government what their tax withholdings are, as well as well, that's for the tax purposes. Work classification, again, this is where you would put in, labor group 1, asbestos worker, tile finisher, those types of things. So for that work classification. In this section, you do the day and the date. So if this is Monday, or I guess, if this is, if you do a Thursday through Wednesday pay period, so this would be Thursday, 4/29, Friday, 4/30. So you put those dates, the days on the top, dates underneath, and then the hours worked. So you have standard. This is a little bit backwards than what you might think, but you have your standard on the second line. Sorry. So the standard is on the second line. Overtime hours for that particular day is on the first line. Column 5 right here is basically the sum of both of those hours. And then you'd have your base rate of pay on column 6. So for your overtime, depending on the wage determination, it will tell you kind of how to calculate those overtime hours, on how much needs to be paid overtime on each one of those on the rate of pay. And then you have your gross amount earned right here on 7. Deductions, standard tax deductions, total deductions there, and then your net wages paid for the week. Where is okay. So let me see here. So let's get to this. So the key piece with this, I'm sorry here. So the key piece with this as well is that each different work classification that your employee works during that particular work week would be a separate line item. So if you have a worker that does 3 different work classifications, they would have 3 different line items for that week on this particular report. So each work classification would have its own separate line item for that. And again, we have kind of the line item by line item on how to do this within the presentation. So any questions right now before we go on to California DIR? So the key thing with the WH-347 as well is that there's no electronic filing of the WH-347. So this is a physical sheet that needs to be mailed to the Department of Labor on a weekly basis, and which makes it a little bit more difficult to do that. Now, one of the things that I will say with the WH-347 is that most payroll companies will have some type of a report for this. So almost every payroll company that has, that does work with construction companies will give you a WH-347 like either the data so that you can fill it out in some type of an export, but most of them will actually provide a form. So if you are currently working on federal projects or are looking to work on federal projects, definitely you need to look at asking your payroll company to see if they support that, and how do they support that, in integrating your time and attendance, your different work classifications, different pay rates, looking at how complex your particular situation is, in that if you have employees that are working multiple multiple work classifications in a particular day, and sometimes even even in a day adds a level of complexity that's even more than in a week. But you have to kind of explore and ask your payroll companies if they can handle that. Some can handle multiple payroll or multiple work classifications over a week, but not during a day. And so it's just, you have to be aware of that there is some technology out there to help you out with this. And if your payroll company, you really want, if these are the types of jobs that you want to go after, then your payroll company should be somebody who really partners with you to make this easier. I do see a question here, so let me get back to this here real quick. Sorry, I need to expand my question box. The two compartments on 7. Okay, on box number 7. Give me 1 second here. Okay, on 7. Okay, the gross amount earned. So, and I apologize, I think I forgot a piece of this. So on the federal side, for the federal government, they don't necessarily break out the fringe as separate than, even though they have it on the wage determination. So you can see it here on the wage determination, that they have this separate base rate plus the fringe amount here. When it comes to reporting, they allow you to report this as a single number from a pay rate standpoint. And so when you're here on the rate of pay, so for standard hours, this amount right here in 6 would be the addition of these, would be the sum of these two numbers. So that's what your pay rate number is there. Now I want to make a note here. So on any overtime hours, let's just say that the overtime is 1.5 of your normal base rate. So on this particular one, so it's 42.54. So that's 21.27. So what is that? That's 63. 63.81. My math is correct. So for the overtime, it's just 1.5 the base rate, this 42.54. Okay, it's not 1.5 times the sum of this. For your standard, that would be 1.5 times your standard hours. I'm sorry, I'm going to confuse you here even more because I'm saying this very poorly. So let's talk about this rate right here, right now. So you can see there's 2 boxes in here, but really what it is 42.54 plus 19.17. So that is your standard rate, and that is what is paid on every single one of your standard hours. For your overtime hours, it is 1.5 times the 42.54 plus the 19.17. So you're still paying the fringe benefit amount on your overtime hours. So any hours that employee works, you still pay this fringe benefit amount. You just don't have to pay 1.5 times the fringe benefit amount. So going back to this right here, so on your overtime, it's 1.5 times your standard rate plus your fringe benefit amount. For your standard hours, it is just the addition of this 42.54 plus the 19.17. So when you look at column 7 right here, the upper left-hand side would be your total number of hours times this pay rate. That's how much overtime payment that you paid that employee. The lower right-hand corner of this box are your standard hours times your rate of pay to get your gross amount earned. And again, this is just for that one work classification. Clear as mud. So again, if there's, this is typically where people will have a lot of questions on the fringe versus, is really in the overtime. And even as I'm trying to explain it, you can see like it can mess you up a little bit. And so the key piece though to this is to remember that you have to pay fringe on every single hour that your employee works on that particular job in that work classification. You do not have to pay time and a half on the fringe amount. That's only on the base rate. So that's kind of the key takeaway for these boxes, is just to remember that kind of rule, is that I have to pay fringe dollars on every single dollar amount, but I don't have to pay time and a half on that fringe amount or on that fringe rate. Any other questions on the WH 347? All right. All right, so then let's go on to the next. Let's go on to the fun one. California DIR A131. So we're gonna kind of go through the same process here of gathering your information, and guess what? It's really actually pretty much the same. You have to have, once you have your process down from a certified payroll standpoint, and making sure that you're tracking your hours that matches what those workers are actually doing on the job on a daily basis, and you have the correct wage determinations associated with those classifications. Once you have that process down, you are way more than 50% there on this. And so, that is where, I want to kind of give you some hope in this, and that, once you kind of figure out those pieces of it, and really getting your time and attendance right, kind of your reporting and validation of that time and attendance and daily reports, that is, once you get that process really baked in and working smoothly, the rest of this is just it's just making sure that you get the right numbers in the right box. And so we're going to go into the DIR here, and we're going to talk about how to read the wage determinations in California. There are, it's a little bit more tricky because you have to kind of read into certain things. But the good thing is that it doesn't change as often as the federal does. And so I am going to go out to the California DIR. And so dir.ca.gov, we'll send you this link as well to look at it, but this is where you go to find your general prevailing wage determinations, as well as any classification definitions. California obviously has a lot of rules and regulations around apprentice. We're not necessarily going to get deep into apprentice and how to track and report on all of that stuff, although our software does do that. And we'll talk a little bit about our software at the very end. But so we're going to focus right now on the journeyman. The key thing that I'm sure everybody here knows, but just to kind of reiterate is, you have to have a certain number of apprenticeship hours for every journeyman that you have working on the job. And obviously that's where ABC SoCal does such an amazing job, through their apprentice programs and getting those, allowing, member companies to really leverage, the school and training that they provide in order and really to allow you to get to those apprentice hours. And so, just having, worked with ABC for, the last couple years, and just seeing kind of how they do things, it's obviously a huge benefit to all the member companies. And so we highly recommend ABC SoCal to, any of our clients that aren't members. We definitely recommend them to join up. It's worth every penny. But we're going to go through the wage determinations for journeymen. And this will take you to this page. And so you have to kind of click through some of these to really understand where a particular job classification falls. And so as a specialty contractor, you're going to be able to go into each one of these depending on the location of where you are. So, the first one to always go through is statewide. just to see like, hey, if I'm in this particular, any of these classifications, then I don't necessarily, I may have to look at some of the others, but for the most part, these are across the state, as far as determinations go. We're going to look at Southern California, however. So if you don't find your craft in the statewide, then it's best to look in these two. Obviously, San Diego has a lot of its own rules. And then there are some other county specific, if you haven't found those. And obviously they do a good job of explaining kind of how to get through the website and how to find it. And so you may have to click through several of these to get to the right classification for you. But we're going to go into Southern California to start with, and we're going to look at carpenter. And we're going to go through kind of how to read this. And so you can see there's 4 pages. This particular wage determination is 4 pages long. A couple key things to look at. So your determination number is obviously critical. This is what you are going to want to track for each work classification that you have on a particular job, is making sure that you have, hey, this is the determination that I used. So that way, if you ever have to go through an audit or an inspection, you can say, look, this is the information that I had at the time, and this is why I'm using this particular determination. The issue date, this is when it's when it was actually submitted, and then you have the expiration date. We're going to talk about a couple things here. So when you look at the craft, the name of the actual of the work classification, you're going to look at this little thing right here. So the little hash mark or pound sign, whatever you choose to call that, hashtag, hash sign, pound sign, whatever you choose to call it. If that's at the end of the work classification title, then that means that this particular work classification does require apprentices on the job. And so you are absolutely subject to the apprentice regulations on that job if you see that hash mark. Most of you know that already. There's very few that don't have a hash mark on there, but there are a couple. The other thing that I want to keep you aware of is on this expiration date. So it has an expiration date of June 30th, 2021, but the key piece right here is this double asterisk. And so you're going to hear a lot of times when you talk about wage determination, is it a single asterisk wage determination or a double asterisk wage determination? So the definition of those is a single asterisk determination means that there are no scheduled increases during the time of that determination is active. For double asterisks, it means that there are scheduled increases. And so if you see like, okay, well, this is my work classification, I have a double asterisk, I can go down, and again, this is where you can see the definitions. You see the areas, and each area may have a different definition of what a carpenter is and different determinations. We're going to go back through this. I just want to get through the double asterisks here. You're going to have to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Where's my double asterisk? Okay, where am I at? Oh, I know why. Sorry. So I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to click on my increase, my predetermined increase. And I'm a carpenter. I'm going to look at this, and this will tell me when I have to be, when there's going to be an increase. And so this says, because it expires on June 30th, but on July 1st, there will be a be an increase of $2 allocated to wages and or employer payments. So, so there are no further increases applicable at that time. And so this just means that they're only going to increase it one time, that after July 1st, you'll have that increase of $2 to wages. The trick with this is that, if this happens to fall with, in the middle of a pay period for you, technically, you need to make that change in the middle of the pay period. We've seen our clients that will, if it does happen, if that change does happen to fall in the middle of a pay period, they'll make that change actually at the beginning of the pay period, and they may overpay for a couple days. But that at least makes sure that they have that. There are softwares like ours that kind of watch that for you and automatically make those changes. But again, it's just something that you need to be aware of from that. The key piece here is that, coming into that, you don't know whether this $2 needs to be paid to the base rate or to the fringe. And so what you'll have to do is come back to this when you're a little closer to that July 1st date, and to see what they actually updated this to whether it actually, this $2, is it $1.50 on the base rate and 50 cents to the fringe, or is all $2 to the fringe? We don't know that until we get closer to the July 1st. But what you do need to understand is that this is a double asterisk, and so there is a scheduled increase, and they tell you exactly what that dollar amount is and when to implement that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the carpenter. We're going to talk about all of this stuff right here. So, the state of California gives you suggested breakdown of your fringe benefits. However, so the fringe benefits are these right here. And so they suggest, this is their suggestion on how to break that down into the total rate. So you have a base rate for this particular carpenter, base rate of $43.76. And then they have 13, 20, 21, $22 and change of fringe benefits that need to be paid to that employee. They also tell you how to calculate daily overtime rates. They also Saturday and Sunday holiday overtime rates as well. So it's kind of nice to be able to get that breakdown. But the key piece to understand here, other than this training amount, right, which goes to fund the apprentice programs, and so If you're part of ABC SoCal, you know, that's really where this 62 cents per hour goes per employee. It goes towards funding those apprentice programs, as long as you designate that to them. Other than this amount right here, you actually have flexibility on how much you want to allocate to any of these other buckets. And so we have a lot of clients that will pay this amount out in cash. The key thing, again, that I want to really, really drive home is that we've had some clients before they worked with us where they were paying this amount to the employee, so this full amount to the employee, and then they were paying this amount back to their apprentice agency, which means they're double paying that 62 cents. You don't really have, this amount does not go towards or to the employee. This goes to the apprentice program on behalf of the employee. And so this is not an amount that needs to be paid to the employee. So there's a little hint that you can, hopefully you're not doing that, but if you are, you can save a little bit of money just by not paying this entire amount to the employee. But the rest of this, we've had clients in the past that will take this amount, these amounts, and they'll just pay it in cash to the employee, which is fine. That actually fulfills the regulation. You can 100% do that. Just remember that on this fringe amount, you want to make sure that you signify that this is separate from the base wage, because again, you do not have to pay overtime on the fringe amount. You have to pay it on every hour that's worked, but you do not have to pay time and a half on that fringe amount. So you want to make sure that you're calculating that separately if you do pay this on cash. The other thing that does is if you do pay this out in cash, then you're still subject to employer taxes as well as workers' comp amounts that you pay, because that's obviously based on gross pay. If you do put this amount into a trust, into a fringe trust on your employee's behalf, then that is exempt from taxes, from employer taxes. And so we have some, we help people with that as well. They can save, as much as 16% of the payroll on those fringe payments that they're not having to pay in taxes. And so that allows for them to pay for other things that they use for expansion, whether that's new equipment, new trucks, able to hire more people, because of that. We've seen some really invest that back into the business and really grow their business because they're saving that money. But again, you have the determination of where this goes. And so if you do have a health plan and that employee, opts into it, then your employer contribution amount can be taken out of those fringe rates. And so you can calculate that and take credit for those against your fringe amount. Again, we're going to go into way more detail in a future webinar, but I just wanted to make sure that we kind of just spent a little bit of time on that to make sure that you guys understand that there are some strategies around this that allow you to still give the benefits that are intended to your employees that really help them out, but at the same time can help you save some money if you are paying this in cash right now. Okay, so we'll continue to move on. Again, you guys, if there's any questions that you have, please speak up. I know there's a ton of information on here. We have about 15 minutes left. I probably have another 10 minutes left to to how we actually submit this to the DIR. We'll talk about both ways to do that. And then hopefully, and then I'll leave some time at the end for questions. But again, the key piece when you're reading the determination, is this an apprentice? Does this have scheduled increases? And then you can see your breakouts of your base hourly rate and then your fringe rate. Okay, so oops. Okay, so submitting the CPR into the DIR. So this is something, again, has to be submitted on a weekly basis. A lot of the same regulations. It doesn't necessarily say what your pay frequency has to be, just your pay reporting has to be done on a weekly basis. We're going to go through the, I'm actually going to go back over here to, and I am going to pull up the Certified Payroll Reporting Portal. I don't have a project that I can kind of enter in right now, so we're going to kind of go back and forth. But again, we're going to give you this this link as well. There's two ways to submit a CPR to the state of California. The first one is to enter it manually online, and we'll go through that piece. The second way is to submit a payroll through an XML file. XML is basically, it's short, it's computer code that that allows, it's a standardized format that allows you to upload information into a website. And so there are a lot of companies that that work with the California DIR to create the proper XML file. You can see these are some of the companies that are out there that do that, that you can work with. Obviously, we are one of them that works directly with the California DIR to make sure that that there is some standardization, that we are working closely with them to make sure that that things can be submitted properly to them. And so any one of these companies, or if you have a very tech savvy payroll department, you can create your own XML of this information. That's more power to you if you want to do that. But it's very easy. You simply choose your XML file, you upload it, and that's it. Because that will have all of the information that we're going to go through on the manual online entry. And so everything, if you can, work with one of these providers to build out the XML for you, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier when you go to submit things to the DIR. All right, next, so we're going to do the online entries. If you have not registered with the California DIR, most general contractors, especially contractor, most general contractors require that as part of the bid process, that you actually have your DIR contractor license number. And so if you do go through that, or your registration number, not license number, registration number, they do have a process right there that you can sign up for it. It's very simple. You can get right through and you get your registration number at the end of that process, at the end of that wizard, and that you can come back in here and use this. You can use your social security number or FEIN, although I do not recommend that whatsoever. This is all public record. And so so this can be, so whatever information that you put online is open to the public at any point in time. And so I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you actually just go through, do the registration. It does not take that much. There is a fee that is associated with it. I believe it's $450. But if you are going to actively go after prevailing wage jobs, that could be just a small investment into what could be some very profitable jobs. So you enter in your contract number. On the actual contract, there should be a DIR project number. If you don't have it, you can do a lookup by the project name, but your prime contractor or the awarding body will have that project ID. If you have the address, they can look it up for you. Obviously, your general contractor should have that. So contract with, this is the actual owner of the contract, not necessarily your general contractor. So again, all of that information should be on your awarded bid contract. And then that will take you then to connecting to the project. So once you actually connect with the project, you only have to do it one time because that connects your contractor ID with that particular project. It then, within the DIR database, now you are a registered contractor for that particular contract. The next step then, and this is what you would be doing on a weekly basis when you go in and you select your contract, is you start entering in the payroll information. And so again, the same information that you did with the WH-347. So there is an additional step of an address with the A131 versus the WH-347 that did not require the address. But you add in, for each one of these, you'll add in this box for each work classification, right? And so if you have an employee that works 3 different work classifications during a week, you would fill this out 3 different times for that same employee. And so here, when you do the craft, and so this is where you enter in, enter in the work classification. This is the employee's name here. If this is a week where you're not doing anything, all you have to do is check this box, and then you don't have to fill out any of the employee information, obviously. Payroll number, again, that's the same rules as before. It's your first, not necessarily the job's first payroll that you're paying here. And then if it's the last payroll that you have, then this is the box that you would check. I'll come back to that in a little bit. Same kind of rules apply. And so you put in how many hours, whether it's straight time, overtime, double time, based on the rules that are in the wage determination. You sum your hours, you'll have your base hourly rate. Again, you're going to reference back to your wage determination to see what your base hourly rate would be for each one of these. And then your total fringe. So total fringe here is your fringe rate. And then your hourly training. So again, going back to our wage determination here, so that training is separate than the rest of this fringe. It's paid on behalf. And so this amount right here, so this $22 and change minus the 62 cents is the amount that you put here in the total hourly fringe. The hourly training would be the 62 cents. This number is going to be the same through all three of these levels. So if they did work overtime or double time, that fringe amount is the same. The hourly training is the same. And again, so you would fill this out for each work classification that employee did. The other thing to remember is that when you hit submit, we're going to kind of skip through that and I'll come back to it. So you would add an employee and continue to do the same thing. When you hit submit and you certify, and this is kind of the important part here, you have to certify your results in this, and you click to sign. You can only do that one time. So once you submit a report, that's it. It is now part of the public record. It's part of your submission to the DIR. If you come back and you realize, oh crap, I made a mistake. I totally put the wrong wage determination for this classification for this one employee. You can't go back and fix it. What you have to do is actually resubmit a new CPR with that exact, for that exact payroll number with the exact weekend date for that one employee. You don't have to change everybody. You don't have to re-enter in everything. You only have to re-enter in what you are actually changing. And then that can be then submitted and it will show up as an addendum. And so these will show up as kind of WE, and then it'll have kind of the date, and then if there could be a -1, well, that means that was an amended one, or a -2, that would be like a second amendment to that original certified payroll. So you can submit as many addendums as you need to get the payroll correct, but it is important that you do get that payroll correct. If you ever have to go through an inspection or an audit, you have to be able to show, hey, this is, not only what I reported, but this is also exactly what I paid. So let me see here. So I want to kind of come back to this final payroll. You may not know when it is the final payroll, right? There might be holdbacks or different things, maybe things that are dependent on an inspection or something like that. That addendum process, so after everything is cleaned out, you can go back in, hit the payroll number, click this is the final payroll for that project. You don't have to update anything else as long as everything else is correct, and submit that. That then closes out your time with that job. And so that's, an example of how to use that addendum process as well. So question on, so should the base rate and fringe match the wage determination or what the employer pays? So if the employer pays some fringe to the employee, the base will be higher. So yeah, so what you would want to do here, right? So even though if you pay part of this in cash, right? So you have a base hourly rate and then your total hourly fringe. So, from this standpoint here, you wouldn't necessarily move that dollar amount and report it on the base hourly rate. So if you're paying part of this fringe in cash, you still want to keep that amount that you're paying in cash as part of the fringe and not move it to the base rate. And the reason why you want to make sure that you keep that separate is because you don't have to pay time and a half on that fringe amount, even though you're paying it in cash. And so that is kind of the key reason on why you don't want to move that into your base hourly rate, because of some of the overtime hours that you may be subject to. So you still want to be able to break that out as much as you can. And so what I would recommend on that piece is that, when, again, this is where it's really important that you can partner with your payroll company that understands how to do the certified payroll reporting, so that you are maximizing, as a company, you're maximizing how many fringe, how much credit can you take from those fringes, and not necessarily overpay on overtime or different things. If even though you are paying it on cash, you still want to show that as being a separate payment, a separate line item payment on your payroll, as a fringe benefit and not as a base pay. And that's just kind of one of the big, it's one of the big things, again, that you want to make sure that you're working with your payroll company that really understands the certified payroll, so that they can help you walk through and make sure that that's all itemized. Because eventually, if you do go through an audit, and honestly, most general contractors now require that that you're showing that, hey, yeah, I see what you reported, but did you actually pay it that way? And so that's where you want to really to watch on that. So even if you decide to pay the fringe in cash to an employee, you don't include it in the overtime calculation. That's why you want to keep that amount separate. Yes, your fringe amount, you have, again, if somebody works 10 hours in a day, you have to pay that base fringe rate on all 10 hours, even if you're paying it in cash. And let's just say your fringe amount is $22. You have to pay $22 for each one of those 10 hours. You do not have to pay $22 for the first 8 and then $33 on those next 2. That's why it's really important that you separate those out in that calculation. Okay, we are way up against time here. Hopefully that answers your questions. We kind of went through correcting the CPRs. Your responsibilities, if you guys can bear with me again for just like another 15 minutes here. So, the thing that you are going to be required if you are ever audited or go through kind of inspections is that, it's your responsibility to know what the prevailing wages are for each job. We've had a lot of clients that, they bid on a job and there's really kind of no notification that it was a certified payroll. And then they show up on the job and all of a sudden they're like, hey, you need to provide a CPR on a weekly basis. Unfortunately, if you still want to continue with that job, you're going to have to do this. And so if you accept the job, you have to know the law, you have to know the right wage determination, and you have to get it right. And that's, again, a lot of this comes down to the processes that you can put in place. There is technology out there that helps you, that can help you make it much, much easier and help you simplify that process. That's what we do as eBacon, is we help people kind of simplify this and really take that in. If I could, have like a couple minutes just to kind of show you what we do. It's really for us is, we help you with that initial setup to where creating the job is a simple, 4-step process of inputting basically everything that you got from your general contractor contract. you input that into our system, and then we help you pick the appropriate wage determination. Wage determinations are really based on either the bid date or the award date. Bid date, I believe, is for the federal government. The award date is for the state of California. Again, that varies by state in the prevailing wage law that you have on there. And so we help you because we keep a database of all of these wage determinations. And so based on your location of the job, the award or the bid date, we help you select what the proper work classifications are. We also then help maintain those wage determinations. Now, again, it's still your responsibility to know this, to make sure that this is correct, but we take, hundreds of wage determinations and we make it that, a simple choice between, maybe a couple or at most maybe a dozen wage determinations that you need to pick from. And if you have any issues, we have a wonderful customer service team that will work through it. If you don't know which one to, thanks, Lindsay. Did I say that backwards? I did. I'm sorry. No, in California, it's the bid advertisement date. I said that backwards. Sorry about that. My tongue was going faster than my mind, so I apologize. So we maintain that for you. We also have a time and attendance system that either your foreman can use on their mobile device, the employee can use on their mobile device. It also has geofencing so that it only allows employees to log in when they're within a certain number of feet of that project address. You can change work class. So if you have employees that work multiple classifications in a day, you can change those classifications with one click. It's easy to submit expenses and receipts. Probably one of the best things about our system is that we really simplify the payroll into through this process, because we help you do the validations on a daily process or on a daily basis, so that if you want to validate things on a daily basis, you can also do it on a weekly basis, but we make it very, very easy for you to validate that all the times the classifications are match what the daily report has to say, or what your foreman is telling you, if they're not the ones that are actually doing the job time punches. And then if you ever make a mistake, we have an automated restitution process where you can just simply make the change within the payroll system. It will auto generate any addendums and as well as make those payments to the employee. And then as far as reporting goes, I think the other thing that we have is one-click reporting, and so our system will generate multiple formats. So if you need to submit a WH-347 and an A131, and your general contractor requires you to submit to LCP, we generate every single one of those reports with one click, and then you can go through the submission process. So that was my super fast 2-minute pitch. But I hope this was really, really informative for you guys. I hope it was practical. Again, everyone that attended will get this presentation, so it will walk you through step by step on how to do each one of these. I know that we're way over time. If there are any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. I will stay however long that I need to answer any questions. Before I do that though, our next our next webinar for ABC SoCal is going to be on May 27th. And it's prevailing wage pitfalls. And we're actually partnering with our prevailing wage attorney, Rob Rodginson, and he is going to kind of talk about the regulations. He's going to talk about, he used to actually work for the California DIR, so he's going to talk about audits, inspections, what are they really looking for, and we're going to kind of go in some details around how to avoid some of those mistakes that can be extremely costly. So that's going to be on May 27th. I know Lisa's going to send out some invitations here a couple weeks ahead of time. But I guess with that, are there any questions that you guys have? All right. Well, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, my name is Nate Curran. You can reach me at nate@ebacon.com, or you can reach out to us at info@ebacon.com with any questions. We also have, we will be having a booth at the Craft Championships, I believe, that's coming up here really quick. So Liza Pitts, who is one of our regional sales managers, will be there, and she'll be absolutely happy to answer any questions that you have. So we look forward to speaking with you soon, in about a month. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.